Nicholas Fouquet was the finance minister of the King Louis XIV. He was a very generous man. He liked to write poetry and loved to have pretty women around him. He, being a finance minister, loved money and had an extravagant lifestyle. King Louis XIV was a very young king when his prime minister died. Nicholas, the then finance minister, thought he would be an obvious successor for the position of prime minister. But instead of appointing him, the king abolished the position of prime minister. Seeing this, Nicholas thought that he is not in good books of the king. So he decided to improve his relations with the king. Nicholas had built an extraordinary palace at the time. He kept a grand ceremony to inaugurate the palace and invited the king as guest of honor. The real reason for inviting the king was to impress the king and for Nicholas to come into good books of the king. Greatest minds of the time were invited to this party. The party started with 7-course dinner, which featured foods that were never tasted in France before.
Let the feast begin.
New plates were designed for this ceremony. Special plays were written for this specific ceremony. Well-known singers were called. After the dinner, Nicholas personally gave the king a tour of the palace. After that, they witnessed a special show of fireworks. The party continued late in the night, and everyone agreed that this was the best party they had ever attended. Next day morning, King ordered the army chief to arrest the finance minister, and the finance minister was sent for a trial, where after 3 months, he was found guilty of looting from the treasury of the kingdom. But in reality, he was doing it with the consent of the king, and he was giving the king his share. Nicholas spent the last 20 years of his life in jail. King Louis XIV was an arrogant man. He always wanted to be the center of attention.
मैं बहुत अच्छी तरीके से कपड़े धोता हूँ, इसको बिल्कुल नहीं आता.
He could not digest that finance minister had more attention than him. After Nicholas was sent to jail, he replaced the finance minister with a puppet who directly transferred all the money from the treasury to the king. King started living the same way that Nicholas was living. He built even more bigger palace than the finance minister. He hired the same contractors, designer and gardeners to build this palace. He eventually used this palace to host more grand parties than that were offered by Nicholas. So what do we learn from this story? That night, Nicholas, the finance minister, was presenting spectacle after spectacle to Louis, which were more magnificent than the one before. Nicholas wanted to impress the king and prove his loyalty and devotion towards the king. Not only that Nicholas think that this would put him in good favor of the king, but he also thought that his connections and popularity would make him the best candidate for the position of prime minister. Seeing at each smile from his friends and minister towards Nicholas during the presentation of spectacle after spectacle, the king felt that his friends and ministers were more charmed by Nicholas than by himself. Due to this, instead of getting flattered, the king got offended. In similar manner, one should be aware, in pursuit of impressing your boss, you should not make him jealous.
अबे जल्दी बोल, कल सुबह पनवेल निकलना.
Nicholas Fouquet. Nicholas Fouquet was the finance minister of Louis XIV. Nicholas Fouquet. Nicholas Fouquet.